So I'm thinking that Reggie Bush is going to get a lot of votes. He comes to mind. I'm also thinking that depending on the fan bases out there, maybe Tim Tebow gets a lot of votes here. If the Miami contingent is here, they're going to raise the game to another level when it comes to bringing players back, because that may mean somebody like a Sean Taylor that you really need to bring back. Unfortunately, rest in peace, 26. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love each and every day with you. This is our big noon show every Tuesday, noon Eastern time every Tuesday here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. My apologies for being a little bit tardy today. I'm still in the midst of getting used to the new digs. So the new digs are not evident to you. They are not apparent to you. It looks exactly the same to you. But what happens each and every time now over the last couple shows is that I've got a number of cables and equipment to swap out and switch. And so a lot going on behind the scenes here at the Voice of College Football that hopefully will be evident to all at some point soon. So my apologies again for being late, but the operational side has to be set up before we can get going. All right, so welcome in. The topic for the day, and I remind everyone that the topic of the day doesn't necessarily mean that we have to talk about the topic of the day. We are wide open to talk college football with you. So whatever's on your mind, I've not had a chance to check out the news of the day. I was about to do this, but thought I better get the show cranked up to check out, before I checked out the news of the day. So if there's anything pressing, if there's anything that's happened today, please leave it in the live chat, because I'm going to go online here in just a second to find out if there's any breaking news in college football. It's a bit slow right now, of course, to a certain extent, although there are player transactions and announcements happening just about every day, whether that's a player committing for 2022 somewhere or another addition to the transfer portal. I believe I'm going to release a video that is going to run down the biggest additions, the biggest transfer portal moves of the offseason, offense and defense. I was starting to look at that last night. So again, welcome in. I will review the live chat, and here's the question of the day. If you could bring back one player, you know what? I'm going to make it two players, and this is why. One player is going to be for your team, one player for your favorite team, and then just a player to enjoy, a player that you enjoyed watching. If you could bring back a player from yesteryear, whether that's from 50 years ago or from 3 years ago that's gone to the NFL, makes no difference. The player that you would like to see come back to college football, if you could bring him back, make him 20 years old again, and watch him play college football for your team or for just general entertainment purposes that you loved watching play. All right. Appreciate everybody on the line. We'll get to your comments in just a second. I'd like to remind everyone that you can catch us on Patreon. Please join the Patreon community at the Voice of College Football. And don't want to make it just a private conversation between Ronan and I, but we've got about 50 over there on Patreon. Would like to add you to the mix. Would like to make it a cast of thousands over on Patreon for about 15 or 16 cents per day. You can join us for watch parties, exclusive live streams, my predictions exclusively over there. I get asked during the college football season for my predictions over here. But for the past 2 seasons, I've had to stay loyal and true to my pledge to provide those for our folks on Patreon, our community on Patreon. So please join us there for my predictions, which I know are not going to benefit you for the next 7 or 8 months. But they will be there for the next football season unless anything changes in terms of our setup. But as it stands right now, those weekly college football predictions and the season predictions are available on Patreon. Also, we just have a good time. So if you want to just help us build the channel, join us on Patreon for about 16 cents per day, or want to check in for the exclusive live streams, watch parties, predictions, the weekly lock of the week from Steve Merrill from Pro Sports Info, And if you'd like the exclusive behind the scenes look at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, you get it right there as well. And then I'm always open to requests, of course. Coming out soon will be our look at the disputed national championship of 1996. And again, we will take more of your requests there. For some people enjoy the Hello, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hey, David. Are we not announcing ourselves? See, I've got a phone system that I'm ready to set up here very soon, and everybody's going to have to identify themselves or I won't take the call. That's going to be our setup coming up here, but I've yet to implement that, but we've got access to a website that's going to make the call-in process so much better because we will actually put everybody on hold so you can listen to the show while you're waiting behind a few people, and then we bring you in, and I know, hey, it's going to be John from Huntsville or whatever else. So that's coming soon, but go right to it, David. There we go. Wow, there's the official intro. Very nice. $1985, yes. He was coming off that huge '84 season, probably should have won the Heisman Trophy. And yes, they might have had a different outcome that season because they were in line, as you well know, to win a Big Ten championship after they beat #1 Iowa, even without Keith Byers. Then they ran into, and I don't know, I know that he played the Michigan game that they lost in Ann Arbor by 10. The week before, though, their Big Ten championship hopes were dashed when they lost to Wisconsin at home. 12-7, I believe, was the final score. And yeah, he was never the same. Even though he played that season, he wasn't the same guy. So you've taken a different slant on this. So I like this because you've furthered the question, you've extended it, taken it down a different path. I was basically just thinking, okay, for whomever wanted to see Reggie Bush come back and just play another season, that would be the wish list. But you're talking about actual incidents that occurred that limited the careers of certain players that you would have liked to have seen be able to finish the season or have the other season. Yeah, the Chris Carter incident, that was one of those situations, much like a Braxton Miller, not from an injury standpoint, but kind of a late shock to the season. That was sometime in August, if I remember correctly, that we learned that Chris Carter would be ineligible for the '87 season. Yeah. Yeah, the passing attack was pretty deplorable that season, and he wouldn't have saved the whole thing, but certainly he was arguably the best wide receiver in college football taken away. Yeah, so some teams, top-notch teams that we've seen, have been so stacked at running back that losing the #1 guy isn't crucial. But for that team, there was just nobody to replace him. There was just nobody. They tried. They had, of course, Lydell Ross, and shoot, I'm not thinking of Maurice Hall. They had Maurice Hall, 28, and now I'm thinking of who else they had at 34. But anyway, those two basically picked up the carries from what I remember. And Yeah, it would have been possibly a different outcome for the Buckeyes. They only lost the one game to Wisconsin before they went to Ann Arbor. Yeah. Well, David, I'm going to take this other call here, but I appreciate you chiming in with those interesting selections. Oh, I missed the last the person that was just calling in. So hopefully you can call back. So that will be another upgrade that we're hoping to get settled here in the next couple of weeks, would be access to a website that allows us to put you guys on hold, because I know it's got to be frustrating for you guys, because when I'm lined up with calls and I believe that I have wrapped up the conversation with the person that's on the line, then I try to get them off the line as soon as possible, because I know that I've only got maybe 5 or 6 seconds to get to the next call, and not always able to do that. Got a personal call coming in. Let's not take that. Don't want to do that. So again, the number is 860-325-3687. Let me post that to the screen for those people that are not familiar. Don't expect you guys to keep the getting a personal call. So please do not. I think that person might be watching the show, so please do not call my personal line for the call-in show. It's 860-325-3687. In the meantime, I would like to get to a place where I can coordinate my audio board well enough to where you don't have to hear the operator online, but that hopefully is going to be short-lived. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Anthony. How's it going? We don't have like extremely strict guidelines here. So basically, we're just having a conversation, Anthony. The angle that I took off the top of the show was basically that you would select maybe a player on your favorite team, and then maybe just another player that you enjoyed watching. But we'll leave the question wide open. Okay, that's a good list there. Yeah, unfortunately, Sean Taylor has left us. Then you've got Ed Reed. So you're talking early 2000s for both of those guys. And then going back to Adrian Peterson, mid 2000s. So sounds like that was a good era of football for you. Early 2000s, like 2000 to 2005. Josh Heupel as the quarterback, not the coach. So, Anthony, you're a Miami fan. Sure. I believe he was a Heisman finalist. He did not win the Heisman Trophy. Eli Ole Miss would have been circa 2002 and 3. Jason White won the Heisman Trophy at Oklahoma in 03. But let's see, Heupel won the national championship in 2000, and that would have been Chris Winke's Heisman year. Yep. Okay. You want to see Calvin Johnson come back. I would like to see Calvin Johnson's numbers from college, because, of course, he was playing at Georgia Tech, and they didn't have the most prolific offense. But Let's see, would it have still been Paul Johnson? Paul Johnson got there around 2005 or 6, so I think it would have been Paul Johnson. Well, I don't know if Paul Johnson didn't know how to use the receivers. It was just the style of offense. Those receivers were pretty effective when they did get the ball thrown to them. Georgia Tech always led the nation in yards per catch. So they didn't throw it a whole lot, but they would get those guys downfield for big yardage. Brian Bosworth. I thought he was a corner at Miami, but I am not a Miami expert to remember that exactly. So, Anthony, you got Ed Reed playing linebacker? Okay. I thought you said that linebacker. Okay. All right. Very good. So, Anthony, how many passes do you think Calvin Johnson caught his last season at Georgia Tech? Yeah, he left before his senior year. So his last year was his junior season at Georgia Tech. That was his last year in college. Oh, so I was asking you that question because we were talking about him being underutilized as a wide receiver in college. But if he caught 65 passes, that's pretty good. Okay, Anthony, how many guys in college football in 2006 were catching 100 passes? The answer would be no one, especially in the Power Five, or none. In Power Five football in 2006, I would say uh, next to no one ever. Maybe a few here and there. Maybe Michael Crabtree did because they threw it so much at places like Texas Tech. But us talking about Calvin Johnson being underutilized at Georgia Tech really, I will admit, his numbers are surprising me. I probably looked at these at some point, but he caught 76 passes his last season for 1,202 yards and 15 touchdowns. So he was not underutilized. He caught 54 the year before and 48 his freshman season. He caught 28 touchdown passes. So I'm going to tell you, actually, that Georgia Tech has produced better NFL wide receivers than running backs. Also, Paul, well, here's the deal is that, yeah, see, I'm forgetting about Chan Gailey being there, the old Dallas Cowboys head coach. So Paul Johnson got there in 2008. So he missed Calvin Johnson. So they weren't running the triple option with Calvin Johnson there. So Chan Gailey was the head coach. Yeah, he was the head coach. I forgot about old Chan Gailey, who left the Dallas Cowboys and took over at Georgia Tech. So he was the head coach for Calvin Johnson's years there, all of his seasons at Georgia Tech. So there you go. So they were running a pro style offense, and I had to figure that. I wanted to look at that because I thought, how would Calvin Johnson possibly be the prospect that he was coming out of a triple option offense? So he probably would not have attended Georgia Tech had it been a few years later. Denarius Thomas, I believe he was at Georgia Tech as well. Yeah, I don't even know how to spell his name, but Denarius, we'll not go through it, but I'm not being able to find him. But anyway, yeah. All right, Anthony, I appreciate the call. You have a good one. Anthony gave us a complete football team. We didn't get a kicker, I don't believe, or a long snapper from Anthony, but he went full throttle on us right there. So this is where this is good to have the internet. There was a time in my life I didn't really need the internet. People used to ask me questions about, who won the 1970 Rose Bowl and how many yards did Calvin Johnson have in 2009, and I would be able to have those answers at a moment's notice. But it's good to have the internet because I forgot about Chan Gailey's stay at Georgia Tech. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Oh, you know what I...
And check that setting. Make sure it's Roadcaster Pro.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Is it there now?
Yeah, it should be
All right,
there.
All right. Talk on your mic. Yeah, there we go. All right, bye-bye.
Got my, I'm in trouble when I've got my tech guy calling me in the middle of the show, who shouldn't even be watching. He should be working on his own production there, who's getting me all set up. So I apologize for, we did not get Anthony. We didn't get David's comments. So my apologies there. So again, for future upgrades, sometimes there's a difficult transition period. So as we upgrade things here, and hopefully that includes audio and video and graphics and all of that very soon, we're having some growing pains. So my apologies. Horrible on my part. So again, I don't believe, and you guys were probably telling me in the chat, but I hadn't gotten to that place in the chat yet. So I don't know if all of you heard Anthony's rundown. He pretty much gave us an All-American team on both sides of the ball. And then David Greenshield with the take on Maurice Clarett missing 2003 because of his issues with the NCAA and then opting out of school and going to the NFL early. And Chris Carter in 1987, Keith Byers with a broken foot. had his issues in 1985 and missing most of that season for Ohio State after his historic 1984 season. Let's get to some of your responses. Which players would you bring back if you could? David Knight, Rocket Ismail, and Tim Brown. Very nice. Yes, I'm sure Notre Dame fans would like to see a couple game breakers, game changers back in the fold. That would probably be a big difference for them. That seems to be the missing piece for Brian Kelly. Lenny the Gump Summers, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Derrick Henry. Two recent additions for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Yes, Ronan, again, taking this to another level of the conversation. Unfortunately, Sean Taylor would be one we would all want to bring back. Not aware of the Colin Cowherd comments in reference to Sean Taylor. Who else? Good to see David. Good to see Rod. Good to see Lenny. John's on the line. David with another good one, Ohio State related. Of course, Nick Bosa was hurt against TCU in 2018, missed the rest of the season. Ohio State barely missed the playoffs. Don't know if Nick Bosa would have been the difference because the one game that the Buckeyes lost was that horrendous affair at Purdue. Jordan Bowman chiming in. Gaines Adams, rest in peace. Yes, again, taking this to another level with...
One to start the call or two to decline. The call will start at the beep.
Hello, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. Dave Knight. How are you doing?
Hey, Dave. How are you?
Hey, I'm going to ask you an OSU question. You know, I try to bang you on these, right?
I suppose.
So, I mean, I try to, the reason I do that, Mark, is because you're like that guy that always is so unbiased. I appreciate your attitude and how you go about your business. If you were to say Archie Griffin, Eddie George, holy cap, man, there's so many good running backs from Ohio State, man. Yeah. I mean, I think the guy that really stood out for me was Eddie George because he was I think, wasn't he 6'2", 6'3"? He was big.
I am not going to try to pretend that I remember exactly how tall Eddie George is, but he wasn't Eric Dickerson height, but he wasn't a short guy, so he was a pretty big guy. I would think he was 6'1" or 6'2".
So he had power. He also had speed. And I would say speed in a deceptive manner. And then if you bounce way back to Archie Griffin, I'm going to assume most of the people in the Sidecat era had the opportunity to see Archie Griffin play, but he was just, for any player to ever get two back-to-back Heismans, that's just a feat that doesn't come around. I don't care what era it was, that guy was electric. Kind of like Reggie Bush, kind of like Johnny Rodgers. There's so many talented running backs we could talk about, but if you really had that guy to pull out at running back from Ohio State, if you can think of one, who would it be?
Before I answer that question, David, because I appreciate you coming on here to ask me questions that I'm throwing out to the audience, and of course your response was Tim Brown and Rocket Ismail, and with the current personnel on the Notre Dame team and how solid the Irish are, but need those kind of guys. Yeah, that was a really good answer you had in bringing back the type of weapons that Notre Dame would love to have and need right now. So my one fun fact that I would like to pull out for everyone that would be surprised to hear this, as I was when I discovered this statistic and just looking at numbers, is that in Archie Griffin's second, I believe it was his second of the 2 Heisman seasons, he shared the backfield with Pete Johnson, who then played actually with Archie Griffin, ironically, in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals. And Pete Johnson was a short yardage back. He was a big plow.
Big Mark, yeah, he was a big dude though. He was a
mammoth.
stocky,
Yes,
big guy.
He was a short yardage specialist in the NFL. He was known as a short yardage specialist in college, but he wasn't necessarily that guy. He gained 1,000 yards, and you don't do that just running the ball on 3rd and short. So out of 29 rushing touchdowns between the two of them, 29 rushing touchdowns in 1975. What do you think the touchdown distribution was between Griffin and Johnson?
I'm going to say, without, Mark, without me knowing, I'm going to say that Pete Johnson had much more, just from the respect that he was relied on when it was those hard, grueling yards he needed to get. He, I'd say like a 5'10", 5'11" lighter back, maybe not able to pull that off, but Pete Johnson, he had to be at least 6'2", 240 type of guy, right?
Yes.
Am I wrong?
Oh, he was huge.
Yeah, no, that's why I remember. That dude was a bulldozer.
So out of 29 touchdowns, how many do you think Griffin scored and how many Johnson scored?
I would say 17 to 12.
Okay. How about 25-4?
Whoa, nowhere close. Damn.
So this is the reason I bring that up, is that I have all the respect in the world for Archie Griffin, and I'm not going to go through my personal stories with Archie Griffin because I was asked that maybe by yourself not that long ago, and I went through the times that I met Archie Griffin and he appeared on my show and so forth and so on. So I'll tell that story some other time. But I'm kind of wondering why Archie Griffin did win a second Heisman Trophy.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it was parlayed on Ohio State's success and that maybe he didn't have as good a statistics as his junior season, yet he still didn't fall off the map? Like he parlayed on from his junior season to senior season, and he was equally successful. Plus he's a very honorable guy. Like I've seen him plenty of interviews, man. Archie Griffin's like one of those guys you would invite for Thanksgiving dinner, even if you didn't know him, right?
Yeah, Archie Griffin, the two personal stories that I have, especially the second one, just shows what kind of class act he is and what a giving and caring person he is. And I'm not saying that I'm going to stop short of saying that he did not earn the Heisman Trophy in 1975, because do you know how many plays I saw that season? 0. So I was not watching football in 1975. So there's a difference between saying, okay, the statistics and the numbers tell us this versus I actually watched the games and can verify and put it into context. And it's not like he had a bad season. He ran for 1,450 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, but he just didn't score touchdowns. 4 touchdowns out of a Heisman Trophy winner when there's a player on the same team scored 25 touchdowns and still ran for 1,000 yards. That's just kind of crazy to me.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Well, I have only known this for a few years. I haven't known this for a long time. I was just looking through numbers and thought Pete Johnson scored 25 touchdowns in 1975. And then I thought, how many yards did he really gain? They brought him in at the 2-yard line over and over. And then I looked, 1,000 yards, 1,059 yards. So,
Yeah, you don't get that from the 2-yard line.
no. So that's, they had quite the 1-2 punch, but Pete Johnson was scoring the touchdowns.
Hey, another question I wanted to ask you, and this is an Ohio State question. Was it, did you guys have a running back named Brockington?
John Brockington, who played for the Green Bay Packers in the early 70s, and at the time, I'm almost certain was the first running back, because I think Jim Brown would have done this, but I think Jim Brown just missed doing this. I'm almost positive in stating that John Brockington was the first running back in NFL history to gain 1,000 yards either his first 3 or 4 seasons. 4.
It was 4 seasons in a row.
All right. Yes, he played for the Buckeyes.
I thought so, but Mark, if you think about all the great players that come through Ohio State, regardless of position, you have a guy like Brockington who just didn't get that. I don't know that the credit maybe that he deserved. I don't even know about his statistics there at Ohio State. Were they gaudy or were they just yeoman?
Well, let's look him up because, again, I wasn't around for John Brockington. And at the point that I started watching football, he was on the downside with the Packers, but I had heard the name so much. And it was one of those deals where I got into the game a little bit late on John Brockington. But again, he was still playing in the NFL. And but he was struggling at the point that so he had a big senior season with Ohio State. So at the point in which he played, of course, freshmen could not play. So these were his last 3 years at Ohio State. He barely ran for, 187 and 334 his first 2 years. So he was playing behind somebody, let's see, in 68 and 69. They won the national championship and were number 1 in 69 most of the season until they lost to Michigan. And then in 1970, he had his big season that set him up for the pros with 1,142 yards and 17 touchdowns.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I remember him playing for the Packers, but I couldn't remember it was Joe or what his first name. Hey, last question I got to ask you about OSU personnel. You had a wide receiver named Ted Ginn.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you had a wide receiver named Ted Ginn Jr. Am I wrong?
No, they are one and the same. I'm not aware of Ted Ginn. Now, Ted Ginn Sr.,
okay. That's why
I don't know what his playing career looked like. We could look him up, but Ted Ginn's father, so the Ted Ginn that is still, I believe, as of last year, was still playing in the NFL. If not, he played the year before with the Panthers and the Saints. But his father was the high school coach for Ted Ginn Jr. at Cleveland St. Edwards is the high school. He was either a track or a football coach. Sure, my Ohio State contingent could clarify that for me. Oh, this is why John Brockington did not get carries. That's right. I knew it was going to be somebody I would recognize. Jim Otis was the starting running back at Ohio State in 68 and 69, ran for 1,000 yards. And then Jim Otis moved on to the NFL and became a prominent player with the St. Louis Cardinals in the NFL. It's actually drafted by the Saints.
I don't remember the Jim Otis name. Yeah, I know, Mark, I'm a little bit older and probably older than everybody in the chat. I'll be 58 in May, but that picture you see in my Google, that's me 2 years ago. So I'm not far removed from that, although I've gained some weight during the COVID-19 bullshit. So, well, I guess what I'm getting at is that, man, Ohio State has so many great players. What is their national championship total And I know sometimes when we talk about national championships, it's kind of subjective because you have different teams claiming different titles, etc. Where are they at? Around 12 or 11? I'm asking.
I believe the number is 8.
8?
Ohio State, I believe, is
that's
tied
bad.
with Oklahoma at 8. I believe it goes Alabama and whatever number you want to assign Alabama. They assign themselves 18, and they've got championships where they lost 2 games or finished 3rd in the SEC. Well, I'm going to have to, some of these topics, David, that I want to tackle. The only reason I don't is because I hate to state it this way, but I know it's going to be a waste of my time because I know I'm going to produce a video that's going to take 5 hours of research just to kind of clarify and verify a number of things that I already know, probably 70% of it, but I need to fill in the exact numbers and then produce a video. And I'm just not going to get the bang for the buck. But I would take off on college football history and breaking all these things down to the nth degree if it would pay off for me. But that's something I would like to go through all the Alabama national championships because a few of them are definitely they should just be, they shouldn't even say 18 because a few of them are just so ludicrous. It's beyond belief. Like they didn't even win the SEC.
Yeah, I think Alabama has like 35 national championships, that they awarded themselves.
Yeah, well, the number's 18. I've got 16 on this helmet back here, and they've added 2 legitimate ones since then. But yeah, they've got a number of those that are pretty sketchy.
Yeah, there's a lot of them that are sketchy. I don't even think they got double digits. So, but what you said is it goes back into time, and going back into time really is not important. Kind of look at the football seasons is what did you do last year? What are you doing presently this year? What are you going to do next year? So we could all go back to yesteryear. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I don't drift back into too long ago because it really doesn't matter anymore. It's way gone. That time is come and gone, and time to focus on what's important now. That's the present, and I think us as a college football program, I mean, I'm talking about your program. There's really there's Ohio State, there's Clemson, and there's Alabama, and the rest are going to have to fight for themselves after that. And but I'm really looking forward to next season, and I appreciate your time. So I'm starting to blubber, blah 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 blah. So.
Well, David,
thank
you can blubber a little bit more because I see that you mentioned in the chat on the defensive side, Ross Browner, who I'm familiar with. He was a first-round selection for the Cincinnati Bengals as a defensive end and was a really good pro player as well. But I know the name Willie Fry, but I don't know anything about him.
Ross Browner, Willie Fry came in as true freshmen and started right out the gate. That was Notre Dame used to have just a standing tradition. Freshmen will not play, but they somehow broke that tradition for those two. Both were 6'4", 6'5", big brothers, strong, fast, and I'll be quite honest. Going back when Eric Parsegian was coach, he brought in a lot of black football players. They were big, they were strong, they were fast. And then somewhere along the way, they got away from that. And then when Lou Holtz came, once again, he introduced speed to Notre Dame's team. Like, we could never have competed with Miami in the late 80s, early 90s, USC, Michigan. The real shame in all this is Notre Dame, when Lou Holtz was on the top of his game, never got to play Ohio State. They did play him in '95, and by that time, they just weren't as good as they were. But that, like I said, Mark, that's all come and gone, and I look forward to the next season. We picked up Jadarian Price. I think we got a really good heartbeat on Dallin Hayden and Singleton from Pennsylvania. We're battling Ohio State for them. So who's to say what's going to go on? But my friend, the top three guys are going to stay the top three guys for quite a while. And I listened to Wholesome One's video yesterday and Coach Hayes the day before, and I know a lot of Miami fans are looking for them to be in the top four in the next 2 or 3 years, and it's just not that easy. That's Georgia. Georgia's got a huge, great rating at composite talent, yet they're not getting it done.
Yeah, Georgia, I find it amusing to hear people bash Georgia. And so I don't want to say they deserve it. They're certainly there to be a target because they recruit out of their minds, and they've had all these tremendous players go through the system over the last 40 years, but they haven't been able to complete the deal and win a national championship. So that's part of the trash talking of college football. And that's what it is. I see it a little bit different, but Georgia takes a beating, especially from, it seems like the Miami fans love to jump on the Georgia fans because Georgia just boasts being more relevant, being better, and they have been better than Miami for the better part of 15 years or more, but they haven't won a national championship.
Hey, Mark, by me saying that, I was no means putting them down because they're always right there. But they're halfway up the hump, but they just have a player or two difficulty from reaching promised land. But the other thing I would say for Georgia is they play in that strong conference, and also they have to play Alabama every year. So I'm not saying that's an automatic loss because Georgia has beat Alabama before, but it's a damn tough sport in football. And when you're lacking at one position, and for them this year was quarterback, then, man, what are you supposed to do? Like, you try your best, you try your hardest, and but the madness for Georgia, I think, is they have the talent there at every position, but there's always just that one thing about them that they can't get over the hump, and that's certainly no insult. I think it's more of an accolade saying that you have everybody in place, but there's something missing. So, man, I'm done talking. Somebody surely will be trying to call in, so let me jump out of here.
All right, David. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Take care of yourself, bro.
All right. I'm just now catching up to the comments in the chat from when the callers couldn't be heard on air. So, again, my apologies, and always love getting the feedback from everyone. So I'm going to have to be less conscientious in going through the chat, because what happens is I start the show, tons of people come in, they comment, I open the show. By the time I get done introing the show, talking about what's coming up, and getting a few things to the screen that I should get to the screen, and then I start to dive into the chat. Well, I'm 10 or 15 minutes behind, and so then I try to get to everybody's comments and look at everybody's comments, and maybe I should just cut to the chase and jump up to where we currently are, and screw everybody who left comments for the first 15 minutes. And then once I start to take that approach, then everybody's going to complain that I missed the first 10 or 15 minutes of comments. So like to let everyone know that we're on Patreon, so please head on over there. Ronan's there, and George is there. That should be the end of my sales pitch right there. That should be the end of it right there. I should suddenly have 25,000 people on Patreon. George is there. Ronan's there. John's there. as well, and a number of other people. I don't want to leave anyone out. It just hit me since I'm looking at George's comment about bringing back Kyle Trask, and I was going to go down my list of what do I need to hit people up on it. Well, we got Patreon. We need a sponsor. Got a live show schedule this week that has had to be completely restructured. So that's why you subscribe and hit the bell for the notifications to keep track of these live shows, because most of the live shows that we have at set particular times every week, we're going to have to reschedule. And so be watching for the notifications on those. Yeah. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Dominic. How you doing?
Dominic. I know a song by the name of Dominic. Not too much. How are you?
I'm good on this fine Tuesday afternoon. So, the question you put on the title, which player would you bring back? For me, I would bring back Kyle Trask.
Okay. It's a good selection. You and George.
Oh, George would bring back Kyle Trask too?
That's what I'm looking at on the screen right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, here's my point, though. Kyle Trask, did he play in college football last season?
Did Kyle Trask play college football last season? Was that the question?
Yeah. I'm trying to ask which team did he play for?
So Dominic, I'm just trying to let me be patient with me, okay? Because I'm just trying to understand the thought process. So you called in to answer the question that we have today, which player you would bring back, and you would like to see Kyle Trask come back and play. Okay. He's no longer a college football player, so that's a good answer. You and George are right there step for step, but you're not necessarily aware of whom he played for or whether he played last season, but you would like to see him come back and play.
Yes. But I don't have much thoughts on why I would pick him to come back.
Okay. All right. Do we have some kind of contractual obligation that I'm not aware of in regards to you calling into the show? I don't necessarily remember signing anything, but maybe I did at some altered state at some point. I don't know. So I
don't know. I don't know.
We appreciate you calling, Dominic. You have a good day.
You too.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
All right. You're on with the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Kevin, Dallas, Georgia. How you doing this afternoon?
Kevin, I'm doing just fine.
I just want you to know that if you want to receive any counseling after the show, I have no issue as far as giving you whatever assistance that you may need in reference to that, because you have the patience of Job, Mark. And I just want you to know that your listeners greatly appreciate that.
I appreciate that, Kevin. I somehow believe that you will probably, if you're going to answer the question, which I let everyone know that just because I throw out a question or a topic for the day, we're wide open to talk about anything in college football. We don't have to talk about that. But I'm guessing that if you do have a player that you want to bring back, that you actually know whether they played last year and know who they played for. That's just a guess.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I just wanted to go back for a second as far as what probably, as you're quite aware of, hey, my heart runs crimson, and by that being the case, I would like to go back to say, give me the Alabama defense from, let's see, the first time that they had the opportunity to compete against the Clemson Deshaun Watson team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, give me a Reuben Foster.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Give me a Reuben Foster. I think it was Ragland as well as Minka. If you can give me and Eddie Jackson, excuse me. Give me those four along with whatever they had last year. And I mean, because I believe that Deshaun Watson cost us at least one. Yeah, he cost us one championship, I know. So, because I was saying, and because I know as far as Mark, your as far as your memory goes back, the hardest two licks, I can't really even call them tackles, but the two hardest licks I've ever seen in a game, the recipient was Deshaun Watson in that particular game. I think the first hit was Reuben Foster, in which he did the helicopter. And then the second time was one of the D linemen. I don't know whether it was Payne or Hand. But for him to get up from those two licks, I knew that it was going to be a long evening.
Yeah, that team was loaded on defense. And for Clemson to score and run up the kind of yardage, that really was a testament to Deshaun Watson, who had close to 500 yards of total offense in the first game that Alabama won, but and then, of course, had the 2 touchdown drives in the fourth quarter to win the game. And I often credit Jalen Hurts. He didn't play a great game in 2016, but he did score the touchdown and lead the drive that gave Alabama the lead, and he walked off the field with a lead, and that's all he could do at that point. But, yeah, that team had Dalvin Tomlinson and Marlon Humphrey, Ashawn Robinson. I think you mentioned Minka Fitzpatrick and Cyrus Jones and Dylan Lee and Ryan Anderson, and they were just stacked. Eddie Jackson was on that team.
Yes, sir. And then if you fast forward a year, the doggone Tennessee game, and once again, I don't know what is what when it comes to the University of Tennessee playing Alabama, and you having your quote star players running punts and running kicks. Eddie Jackson gets hurt in the Tennessee game, goes without saying he's not participating in the national championship against Clemson, and that's when you have doggone Renfro running wild in the secondary. Yeah. But then also along those lines, Mark, going back, I guess it would have been the second time as far as Clemson, Alabama 2. If Bo Scarborough would not have gotten hurt in that game, would it be safe to say that Alabama would have possibly won that game?
That was in the 16 game.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because he had, you know better than I do, but I have pretty good recollection of that game. Alabama was just beating up Deshaun Watson in the first quarter, and they were up 14-0. And yeah, Bo Scarborough was just running wild, and they were just pummeling Clemson up front. Their offensive line was just road grading, and they were physically dominating that game in the first quarter and a half.
But yes, when you look at college football, and I guess that's what separates college football from any other sport, is that you have a plethora of what if. As far as when you look at, goes without saying as far as Alabama, but I think you can pretty much look at every college as far as if games could only be decided as far as, okay, your Buckeyes being 100% healthy, my Tide being 100% healthy. As far as we wouldn't have as far as what if scenarios. But the thing is that, as we all know, football is unfortunately a collision sport. And by that being the case, injuries are what they are. And, they are a factor, but that's the one thing that separates your Buckeyes and Alabama and Clemson and et cetera, is that those teams recruit. And when you recruit, honestly, when it's all said and done, Mark, and I don't know how you feel about it, you really can't have an excuse. Because when and that's the thing, going back as far as I think a gentleman that spoke or put in the chat earlier, in reference to the University of Georgia. Some want to compare and contrast, say, 5 years of the first 5 years of Mark Richt, the first 5 years of Kirby Smart. And when you do that, I don't know whether you can fairly do that, because wouldn't it be safe to say, Mark, that Kirby Smart first 5 years as far as recruiting laps Mark Richt's first 5 years of recruiting?
Yeah, it's decidedly better. Mark Richt, I know what the records were and what the scores were, and I remember what happened on the field. But in terms of the recruiting rankings early in Mark Richt's tenure, which would have been, what was he, 2001 to 15, I think were his years. Maybe 2000. Yeah, I think those were his years. He won the SEC in 2002 and almost won the national championship that year. Only lost one game, went 13-1, and had another big year in 2005 and 2007. So I'm sure he had very highly rated classes, but he was more in the 8 to 10 range typically, and Kirby Smart's been in the 1 to 3 range in recruiting.
But and along those lines, I would say that Smart, if you had to compare and contrast the two as far as when it comes to recruiting, I think Smart pretty much a graduate, or I could say a graduate of the Saban School of Recruiting, as in not only putting a border as far as around the state of Georgia, but also going into Florida, which I don't think that Rick invested as much. Sad to say, he didn't invest as much in the state of Georgia as he did in Florida. And as we know, I mean, when you look at the Buckeyes, when you look at the Tide, and you look at pretty much every other school in the nation, hey, they have no problem going to what was one time called the state of Florida. And not state of Florida, but the state of Miami, as in Dade and Broward County. And, as far as when you looked at, as far as Alabama's secondary, as well as 2/4 of the Buckeyes secondary in this national championship, 6 of the 10 guys or 6 of the 11 guys were from, Dade, Broward County.
Well, I'm looking at Mark Richt's 2002 and 2003 classes. They were both number 9 in the country. Then his 2004 class was number 7. So, yeah, he recruited extremely well, but Kirby Smart's been close to number 1 all of his seasons.
So would it be safe to say that this year Mark would be boom above? And I don't mean in the respect as far as pitchforks and torches, but just in the respect of, if they don't do it this year, then when will they do it?
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, that this seems to be a year in which they could take advantage of, even though Alabama's going to be loaded from a talent perspective. They lose just so many experienced clutch players on the offensive side in particular, and that Florida shouldn't be a serious challenge. So Georgia should be in the SEC championship game. They should be there without breaking much of a sweat, because the other teams in the division aren't close to them. And again, I expect Florida to cycle back and be a decent team, but not be what Georgia should be. I think Florida's going to be more like a top 15 to 20 team. So they should be in Atlanta waiting on whoever comes out of the West, most likely Alabama, for the SEC championship. And they have a quarterback who now, with a good 5 games under his belt at Georgia and being able to prep himself throughout the spring and summer and get set for this season, they should be primed to win it.
Indeed. And along those lines, just one comment and one question mark. Then I know as far as to clear the lines, as far as with all the callers, and it was just, when it comes to the state of Florida, and as far as the 3 cowbell institutions, as far as Florida State, as well as University of Miami, would it be safe to say that they're going to be the proverbial dog, chasing their tail for maybe the next 5 years or so? And the reason why I say that is, it just appears that when it comes to that state, is that they can't find the right guy. Because I'm not convinced that Norvell or Norvell or whatever his name is, as far as at Florida State, is the right guy. Mullen is, the proverbial, hey, I have a, and I mean this in the figurative sense, not the literal sense, as in, yes, I have a wife, but I'm always looking at, someone else's wife as in another job. And then as far as Miami is concerned, it's musical deck chair when it comes to your assistant coaches and having coaching continuity. So is the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the state of Florida?
Well, I don't generally group institutions together and football programs together just because they're in the same state or geographical area or conference to say, okay, this is one in the same, and when are they going to get it together? Because I believe that one of them could get their act together and the other two could continue to falter. And to a certain extent, based on them overlapping recruiting territory within the state, it would almost make sense that it would be difficult for all three of them to raise their game at the same time. That one of them should be able to take advantage of the other two being down. And Dan Mullen has started on that track, but it's been somewhat derailed for what you mentioned. I don't think that he should be even putting out that type of vibe that he's flirting with the NFL, because that's not good for recruiting. And that's what he's done. And he just tends to get in his own way, or has over the past year more so than before. Before, he just seemed to be a quirky guy that would do some odd things, but they were harmless. But this past football season, when they should have had a banner year, they did to a certain extent, but he marred it by consistently saying stupid things and doing stupid things. Miami could be in the best position, especially since they're located in the southern part of the state, and they should be able to own that part of the state. And I'm not going to call myself a recruiting expert or analyst, especially on the state of Florida, but I think it would prove out that the southern half of the state is even more concentrated with talent. And again, I'm not involved in the culture in Florida. I've visited many times, have close friends there, so I have some understanding. But I think that there are a few different styles of life and culture in Florida, where northern Florida is almost like Georgia and Alabama, and then the central part of the state's different than the southern part of the state. So even people within the state of Florida view it as, okay, they're not even the same Floridians than we are. So I would think Miami should be able to take advantage of that distinction, and that based on having the ease of conference play, where they don't have to stare at Georgia every season in the same division, that Miami would, coming off a top 10 recruiting class, be in prime position to break free. Florida State, I think, has more serious issues and more deeper issues, and have a deeper hole than the other two by far to dig out of.
Wow. As we spoke about, I guess, weeks ago, Mark, is that, college football is healthy when your blue blood programs are on top. And the best way to have college football the way that many people want it to be is everyone being healthy. And right now, unless those blue blood institutions become healthy, it's going to be all about Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and fill in the blank as far as that 14. But those three teams are going to be perennial powers until the other institutions get their act together as far as staff continuity and finding, quote, that guy. And then not only, not wanting to be a microwave as in, hey, we got to get it done in 2-3 years, but it's going to have to be a 4 or 5 year program. 4 or 5 year process.
So Kevin,
as always, thanks for listening,
absolutely.
Mark. Greatly appreciate it.
Appreciate that, Kevin. Have a good day.
Hey, thank you. Have a good day now.
As was brought to my attention last night when I think it was Chase was on the line talking about exactly what Kevin touched upon at the end of that conversation about college football being ruled by 3 schools. Look at the playoff era. 7 seasons, 2014 through 20. That's 7 national championship games. So 14 possible teams could have played in those championship games, and we've had 3 play in multiple games, and we've only had 5 teams play in the national championship game. Alabama, how many times in those 7 years? 2015, 16, 17, 18, 20. Alabama 5 times. Clemson 2015, 16, 18, 19. Clemson 4 times, and Ohio State twice. And then LSU and Oregon have each played in the national championship game once. So 5 teams, and 3 of them multiple times, have played in the national championship game in the last 7 years. In the 7 years before that, so we don't have to go back to the 80s and 90s and say, look at the parity in college football and how many teams had a chance to compete for number 1. Just go back the previous 7 years, 2013 back to 07. There were 12 teams, not 5, 12 teams who played in the national championship game from 07 through 13, the same number of years. You had LSU, Ohio State, Florida, Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas, Oregon, Auburn, Notre Dame, Florida State. Those are the teams that competed. You only had Alabama show up multiple times, Auburn multiple times, LSU multiple times. You only had those 3 schools in those 7 years show up multiple times. Alabama, LSU, and Auburn in the national championship game from 07 to 13. And I'm guessing if we keep going through that process, if we take 1999 through 06, then we're going to find, or would it be 2000 through 06, then we're going to find more teams competed for the national championship. Florida State, Oklahoma, Miami, Nebraska, Ohio State, LSU, USC, Texas, Florida. Just take the Big Ten, for example. It's owned by Ohio State. Basically, since Jim Tressel took over. And Michigan was good for a few years once Tressel took over. But he raised the level of play at Ohio State to where they were the top 5 in the nation pretty much every year. And then Michigan fell off after winning the Big Ten championship in 04. And then Ohio State, since 2005, has never been worse than 7-1 in the Big Ten, other than the Luke Fickell interim coach year. So take that year out of the mix with a standing coach, Tressel, Meyer, and Day. Ohio State's worst record in the Big Ten since 2005 has been 7-1. So Ohio State's owned the Big Ten. Okay. If you take that back to the 80s and 90s, let's go from the early 80s into the 90s. You could take any particular year, but look at that span of time. And Ohio State competed for Big Ten championships. Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State, of course, once they joined the conference. You had 5 or 6 teams that fairly consistently competed for the Big Ten championship. The ACC, prior to Florida State, was all over the place with all sorts of pretty marginal clubs. The ACC was really down in football prior to Florida State, really had nobody. Clemson would jump up with a good season that they had in the 80s. They had some 10-2 kind of seasons. But basically, the ACC was kind of a American conference of the day. If anybody remembers the 1980s football into the 90s, that the ACC was looked at almost like the American Conference is now. They didn't have an automatic bid to a major bowl game. The Big Ten went to the Rose Bowl. The Southwest Conference champion went to the Cotton Bowl. The SEC owned the Sugar, and the Big Eight the Orange Bowl. The ACC, their champion went to the Gator Bowl typically, and the Gator Bowl was not a major bowl game. But then Florida State joined, and they were competing for national championships. And Florida State, oh my goodness, from the time that they joined the ACC in 92 up until 05, 06, in that range, for the first 15 years that they were in the league, they won the conference pretty much every year. I checked this out once, and at one point, Florida State won the ACC something like 13 out of 15 years. But yeah, so I don't think it's good for the sport either. I would like to see more teams. I would like for us to have a legitimate conversation about, all you need to do is basically take a Street and Smith or Athlon's or Lindy's magazine and go back, take those magazines from about 1980 to 2000 and look at the cover of them, their preseason predictions, their top 25 or top 20, whatever they listed at the time. The top 25 came into vogue with the USA Today in 1989. But look at their preseason rankings, and you would see something different every year. Alabama could be a top 5 projection one year, and they could not even be in the top 20 the next year. Same thing for everybody else, pretty much. Sure, Nebraska, Florida, Florida State, Miami, they were pretty much the mainstays from the early 80s to the mid 90s. Oklahoma had its down spell. Michigan was good, but maybe not quite that good. But if you looked at those top 15 to 20 teams every year, they're all over the place. They're different every year. I could list 35 teams that made appearances in the top 10 to 15 in the nation during that roughly decade that spanned the 80s and 90s. Whereas now, if you pick up those magazines, those publications preseason over the last 7 or 8 years, you're going to see the same 5 or 6 teams at the top. And I don't know that really anybody should have to do anything about it. There are all sorts of suggestions on what should be done about it. I'm for expanding the playoffs for the sake of the credibility of the sport and the credibility of the season, and creating a fair judgment and evaluation of the season. And because I believe that all the conferences, whether you include the group of 5 or exclude the group of 5, should be included in the playoff. That's my incentive for expanding the playoff. A lot of people have the incentive of expanding the playoff to help in recruiting for these other schools. For Wisconsin, for example, to suddenly have more of a legitimate shot at the playoff and to be able to sell that to recruits. And that may be the result, and that would be great. That's not my incentive. I don't think that we should have to rig the system to try to get recruits to go somewhere else. So Ronan brings up a good point about Mark Richt at Georgia. So we just kind of assume, if you don't know what's happened in the past, that Georgia's always been Georgia, because if they won a national championship in 1980 and competed for national championships in 81, 2, and 3, then they must have been really good for the last 40 years. That's not the case. Georgia was never awful, but if you look at Georgia's performance from, they started to slip at times in the late 80s, early 90s, through the 90s. I was down covering the SEC in the late 90s, and Georgia had a ton of 7 and 5 kind of seasons. They had a couple 5 and 6 years. So for the 10 years prior to Mark Richt, Georgia wasn't doing much of anything. Georgia did not play in a major bowl game throughout basically the entire 90s. I'm trying to think when they played in a major bowl game in the 90s. They didn't. They last played in the Sugar Bowl, which hosted the SEC champion in 82. 83, they had a shot at a national championship. And then from 84 on, it was a lot of Peach Bowls. It was a lot of Peach Bowls, Liberty Bowl for Georgia football. Yeah, I am not coming up with any major bowl games that they played in the 90s. No Orange Bowls, no Sugar Bowls. Oh, Auburn, Alabama were going to the Sugar Bowl, then Florida in the 90s. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty much going through Georgia's, off the top of my head, their bowl game appearances from the mid-'80s to the time Mark Richt showed up, and they didn't go to major bowl games. They did not. None. So they were pretty marginal for 10 or 12 years. And then Mark Richt showed up, and yes, good point, Ronan, built the program to that degree. So he handed off a very talented roster to Kirby Smart. Absolutely. So that's a great point. And I just went through Mark Richt's recruiting efforts, and he was always in the top 10. And some of his classes were 3rd and 4th. Most of them were 7th, 9th. I saw a lot of 7s and 9s and some 3s. So Mark Richt did a great job at Georgia. But never got that game that he needed to cement his legacy. You know, I could jump online here and verify my claim here about Georgia football. I used to do all this by memory, but which I could kind of tax my memory, and because I'm basically coming up with all of Georgia's bowl games from, again, 83 to 2000 off the top of my head. But I'm sure there's going to be a few here. But no, they didn't play in the Orange Bowl all those years. They didn't play in the Cotton Bowl. They didn't play in the Rose Bowl, of course. And they didn't play in the Sugar Bowl from 83 to 02. They didn't play in any Sugar Bowls, meaning they did not win the SEC. Yes. So again, those Herschel Walker teams played in the Sugar Bowl 3 consecutive years, and then they went to the Cotton Bowl after the 83 season, New Year's Day 84, and they had a shot at a national championship, and they beat Texas 10-9 and finished in the top 5. Okay. Then after that, I remember these games. That was a tie. Anyway, Citrus Bowl, Sun Bowl, Hall of Fame Bowl, Liberty Bowl, Gator Bowl, Peach Bowl, Independence Bowl, Citrus Bowl, Peach Bowl, Outback Bowl, Peach Bowl, Oahu Bowl, Outback Bowl, Music City Bowl, until Mark Richt, Sugar Bowl after 2002, and they almost won the national championship. They finished 13-1 that year. All right, folks, good to see everybody here. I have got a busy day ahead of me. Man, I wonder how many, I love to go through useless things like this, but I would like to know how many of these games I could give you the opponent and the score to. I think most of them. I'm just looking at a list and it says nothing but, doesn't have opponent or score or anything. It's just Georgia bowl games and where they went, the year and the bowl game. It's on Wikipedia. Because, of course, let's see, in 21, okay, I'm probably going to lose like 2/3 of the audience here in the next 30 seconds, but I'm going to run through them backwards. So this is what I'm looking at right here. I'm looking at, you can't get it. I'm looking at that, which is basically just year and bowl game. And I just killed my power supply. All right. So the 21 Peach Bowl was Cincinnati, 24-21. 20 Sugar Bowl, that was Baylor. Would they win that game? It was like 26-14. 2019 Sugar Bowl, they lost to Texas, 31-24. It's probably a touchdown. 18 playoffs, beat Oklahoma, 45-42? Is that the score? And they lost to Alabama, whatever the final was, like 30-27. No, 26-23 in overtime. Okay. The 16 Tax Slayer Bowl, they beat Penn State 24-17. The 16 Liberty Bowl, oh, they beat TCU. Yeah, they had DeAndre Swift and Nick Chubb, both of their last games in college at the Liberty Bowl against TCU, and they beat them like 27-16 or something like that. The 14 Gator Bowl, Nick Chubb had a huge game. They beat Louisville like 34-13. The 14 Belk Bowl, Georgia. That one I'm not remembering. The Belk Bowl in 14. Wow, that must have been a down year. 2014 Belk Bowl. All right. 2013 Capital One Bowl. They beat Nebraska. That was a good game. That was when they almost won the national championship. Then they beat Nebraska 45-31. In 12, they beat Nebraska, or they lost to Nebraska in the Outback Bowl, 24-19. 2010 Liberty Bowl. That was a game against UCF that they lost like 10-6. The 2009 Independence Bowl. I'm not coming up with that game. 2009 Georgia Independence Bowl. Maybe if I racked my brain. 2009 Capital One Bowl. That was a, you know what I'm missing in here is after 2011, the Outback Bowl. Oh, I got it. They played Nebraska back-to-back years, and they beat them, the team that almost won the national championship in 12, won 45-31, but then they lost the next year. That was the Belk Bowl game. Yes, that they lost to Nebraska. The 2012 Outback Bowl was the Michigan State game. Kirk Cousins, Michigan State. They won in overtime on a blocked field goal. 33-30, I believe, was the final. So 2010 Liberty Bowl, that was the UCF game. 2009 Independence Bowl. That's the one I can't get. The 2009 Capital One Bowl, they played Michigan State in that game as well. That was Matthew Stafford against Michigan State, 2009 Capital One Bowl. They won that game by about 10. I used to be really good with scores. 2008 Sugar Bowl, that was the game that they blasted Hawaii, 42-10. 2006 Sugar Bowl, that was the West Virginia loss. They lost to West Virginia. We're upset by Slayton and that team, Steve Slayton. 2006 Chick-fil-A Bowl, that was probably a game against Virginia, but I'm not catching that one. 2005 Outback Bowl, I believe that was a win against Wisconsin, something like 24-21. Then you had the Capital One Bowl in 2004. That would have been another Big Ten team. So one time they played Wisconsin. Who else would they have played from the Big Ten? They didn't play Michigan. They didn't play Penn State. They didn't play Iowa. Wisconsin. They didn't play Wisconsin both of those times. Wisconsin was always playing in Capital One Bowls and in Outback Bowls during that time. And I know that Georgia played them one year. Who else would they have played? Because those are Big Ten matchups. Capital One Bowl and Outback Bowl in 04 and 05. One of those was against Wisconsin, and I'm not coming up with the other game. I'm going to be shocked when I see who they played. 03 Sugar Bowl, that was after the 02 season. They beat Florida State in the Sugar Bowl. That, of course, was after Rick left the Bowden staff. Then he played Bobby Bowden in the Sugar Bowl. So that was the first Mark Richt Bowl, Music City Bowl in 01. I don't remember that game off the top of my head. Georgia, Minnesota. That was a Big Ten. The Big Ten ACC would play the SEC, and I'm not going to keep going, but I do remember a bunch of these games. 2000 Outback Bowl, they killed Wisconsin and Ron Dane 33-6. Wahoo Bowl, they played Virginia a bunch of times in the late 90s in Peach Bowls. Twice in the Peach Bowl. I remember Hines Ward being the MVP one time, and I'm going back into the 90s and late 80s, and I don't want to continue to bore you, even though that's my wheelhouse, and I'm going to do much better in the 80s. I remember them playing Florida State to a tie in a Citrus Bowl, 17-all. I think that was in 84. And yes, they played a Sun Bowl game against Arizona. I think that was against Arizona. And of course, the Citrus Bowl game against Ohio State in 92, 93. They played Michigan State and Andre Rison in the Gator Bowl in 89. Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. All right. Now I got to double check myself, and I'm going to click on all those links. All right. I have lost everyone, I'm sure. This is the stuff that I'm very nerdish about. TFJ Boxing, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Florida State is here. Sorry. I screwed up that Super Chat. FSU in here. Football only. Thank you, TFJ Boxing. Regardless of the prominence that Florida State reaches in basketball, football only. So thank you so much for that Super Chat. Appreciate that. That's a reminder to let everyone know that you can contribute here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, through the Super Chat. This channel, this show in particular, will stay alive based on your individual contributions and is brought to you, when it comes right down to it, these shows are brought to you by you. So also consider that if you own a business or have contact with somebody who owns a business who could benefit from sponsoring here, whether that be any specific content, Georgia content, especially since I can read off most of the bowl scores for Georgia football over the last 40 years. They should be impressed with that. So any Georgia-based business, I can sell my Georgia knowledge to you, and we can have a partnership. How about that on all our Georgia content? All right. So regardless of whether you're going to sponsor the entire channel, any particular show, or team-specific content, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. TFJ Boxing, thank you so much for the Super Chat. Join us on Patreon as well. It's about 17 cents a day if we round up. We round down at 16 cents per day. So let's round down so it becomes a more attractive offer. 16 cents per day. Join us on Patreon, and you get to hang out with George and Ronan and other great people. I don't want to shortchange anybody else, but it just struck me in the last few days because we did an exclusive live stream over there the other day, and it turned out to be a conversation between Ronan and myself that I enjoyed very much. And George touts the Patreon offering often, so I appreciate that as well. My apologies again for getting things set up late, being a little bit tardy, number one. Then number two, having the audio equipment not set to the right settings. Therefore, you couldn't hear the first two phone calls. I'll have to go back and listen and see what you couldn't listen, which was basically the first two phone calls. I don't know how you guys put up with me. All right. Continue to hang with me, and we will be back at 6 o'clock tonight on the Ohio State channel. I'm going to answer questions on the Ohio State channel at 6 p.m. tonight. And then at 7 o'clock Eastern, be back here with Cam Underwood from State of the U to talk Miami football. That's, again, our Tuesday schedule. I think I'm going to piecemeal the schedule out this week, because if I throw it all out at you at the same time, you'll never remember it. It's all over the place. We've had to juggle shows constantly. So a number of the shows that have specific time slots, forget about them this week. They're going to be at other times. But for today, a beautiful Tuesday here in Connecticut, February 23rd, 6 p.m. Eastern time, with our call-in show and Ohio State comments and feedback on the Buckeye channel, and then back here at 7 o'clock Eastern time with Cam Underwood from State of the U to talk up the Canes. Great to see everybody out there. Thank you so much for your time, and we will be back soon. Check out the content. Arkansas, Michigan, Texas A&M, among the teams that we're spotlighting recently, and also my look at 1996 and a disputed national championship coming out soon.